watched a video from IGN the other day. I wasn't feeling too good about it. I want us to actually take a look at this if you guys are okay with it. Essentially, this is BioWare's, I mean, the Dragon Age is their baby. And so I know a lot of us had experience with Anthem, but whether it's Mass Effect or whatever other game, Dragon Age Inquisition, Veilguard is looking to, I guess, like modernize or something like that. Like they're trying to go for a wider audience or maybe a newer audience. I kind of want to leave it here to WolfheartFPS to kind of describe his impressions of it. He got to play 6 hours of Dragon Age Veilguard. It seems like it's a mixed bag is really what this game looks like. Because it's like I've already watched a lot of this already, but it seems like there are some good things that he's going to point out. There are also some bad things for sure.
Well, here we are, folks. September 19th, the day that the NDA lifts for most creators and journalists who are given the opportunity to play a bit of Dragon Age, the Veilguard, early. Stay the hell away from my veal. And yeah, I was one of those peeps. So 2 things to note here. Number 1, I am keeping this video what I would consider spoiler free. Any story discussion will be kept very, very vague. And also, just note that the vast majority of us creators and journalists who got to play, we didn't play enough to warrant a real review here. This is basically first impressions for most, so take that as you will. Prepare for a roller coaster of opinions in today's video, and remember, it's just a video game. It's okay if you don't like something that, you know, that I do, or vice versa. Covering this game has been pretty crazy up to now. Starting right off.
Dude, look, man, we were talking about Star Wars yesterday with Paul Tassi, right? We're like, it's just a video game, or it's just a series. Did y'all see Paul Tassi? And look, we were in here making jokes about it, but someone for real tracked down his phone number and sent him threatening text messages. I don't know the details. I know that there is a feud going on between Paul and a YouTuber that covers Star Wars. I think Star Wars Theory. And the community is somehow tracked down Paul's information. We'll need to break this down at some point. We'll get into it at some point. Yes, communities are extremely passionate.
Off of the character creator. Simply put, it offers a ton of customization. You have 4 races to choose from: elf, Kunari, human, and dwarf. And this lineage choice, I can confirm at the very least, does affect some dialogue scenes, which is always great to see. The appearance tab is where the character creator truly shines, though, although the debate over art direction and style, we'll talk about that here shortly. But the appearance does offer an extensive range of customization options if you prefer to create a unique look rather than using presets. I do have another video coming out today, or it may already be out for some of you, showing a deeper look at the character creator, but let me give you a quick overview of what it's like. You start off choosing your pronouns.
Let the war in my comment section.
Don't touch my wheels, which affect how your character is addressed in the game. You then choose your gender, which has no gameplay effect. And then heading into the appearance tab, you can adjust.
That was such a perfect clip to follow up on that. Dude, I'll say this about character creation. I hit the randomize button every single time until I find something just slightly acceptable, and I'm like, yeah, that one's me. That's my character right there.
Just head shape, complexion, and various features such as your forehead, brows, cheek, jaw, chin, larynx, and scalp. They all have their own set of sliders, multiple sliders at that, in different settings. For the body, there are presets, undergarment styles, and body shape sliders. You can even customize your bulge size, but unfortunately, they don't have my size. Simply put, I'm too big. Okay, too small. Damn it. Eye customization includes shape, color, and lashes with options for different eye colors and other details.
You know what? That's something. Bulge size. Really? Could we change up our bulge size in BG3?
Detailed adjustments including heterochromia if you so choose. The nose, ears, and mouth also each have multiple sliders for fine tuning. Also note that during all of this you can change the lighting to see what your character looks like in different environments. And you do have the ability to zoom way.
You want the bulge in a tropical setting or a winter setting, which is important because how does that affect the bulge?
In and out. Hair offers 88 styles, at least for the dwarf race, with adjustable color, saturation, and brightness. Do note that hair is separate from facial hair, and dwarves have 44 different facial hair options to choose from. The makeup tab allows for eye and lip makeup, blush, and even glitter intensity. And finally, there's a tab for tattoos, scars, and paint. Now, the final tab of the character creator, you do get to name your character, and yes, you can do a custom name, but your last name is derived from your faction choice. I was under the impression that this cannot be changed, but honestly, I really can't remember. And then you have 4 choices to choose from for your voice. 2 masculine voices.
Time to get to work.
2 feminine voices.
We're not in trouble.
But you do have the option to switch between 2 different pitches for those 4 different voices. At least that's what I saw. You do, of course, get to choose your class in the character creator, with the 3 classes in this game being Rogue, Warrior, and Mage, each of which have their own 3 specializations that you can build into. More about classes and combat soon. And then you choose your characters.
So 3 main classes with what? Subclasses within those classes.
Faction, which not only affects in-game dialogue, each faction choice also has its own set of gameplay benefits. For example, if you choose the Grey Warden faction, you get increased reputation with the Grey Warden faction. You deal increased damage to Darkspawn, so you kind of have like some lore tie-ins here to the gameplay benefits, and your base defense and health are slightly increased. But if you play as a Veil Jumper, you gain reputation with the Veil Jumper faction more quickly. You deal increased damage to Fade-touched opponents, and you deal slightly increased critical and weak point damage. The other factions include the Shadow Dragons, the Lords of Fortune, the Mornwatch, and the Antivan Crows. All factions important to Dragon Age story, companions, and lore. Overall, I would say it's a solid start for the game with the character creator, mechanically speaking, and I love to see some in-game reactivity to choices made from the character creator. With all that said, if you're not a fan of the art direction and the style of these character models, you may not be able to get that excited even with all of these options. The art direction in this game is a bit of a mixed bag for me, but unfortunately weighing a bit heavier on the negative side. I'm personally not a big fan of the extra smooth, plastic, Play-Doh-y like looking character models. Everybody seems to describe it differently. I really do think you could put some of these characters in Pixar films and they would seriously fit right in many of these films. Now, if that's not resonating with you, maybe I could word this as things just look rather G-rated. As I was looking at several of the creature...
Oh my God. How do you go from that to that? Is this real? This puts no fear in me. This is, I don't know. I didn't play Dragon Age 2. I wouldn't want to come across this guy. You know what I mean?
Designs for this game. The adjective that comes to mind is unfortunately goofy, long before, you know, terrifying or horrifying, which many of these creatures are supposed to be. Like, this is some dark, scary shit. I don't know why the goofy's not the word that I'd want to be thinking of. Now, take a quick look at the Ogres and Inquisition here, the previous Dragon Age game, and compare them to the Veilguard Ogres. You can do this with...
Dude, is there like a different rating for this game? Are they trying to appeal to young children and maybe don't want it to be... I don't know. At the same time, this almost looks... It's so damn goofy, it's terrifying.
With a lot of different creatures. Now, with that said, there's some cool looking creatures in the Veilguard. It's not all of them, but a lot of them. And
God, that looks so bad. I don't know. Again, it seems like across the board, they're trying to take like a more like cartoony, as he said, G-rated approach.
Even the ones that don't look goofy, they just look kind of like toyish. Like nothing's really truly intimidating except for maybe a few. While the style can work for some types of games and media, for what's supposed to be this dark, mature franchise, this is one of the last styles I would have ever expected for this type of game, and I do think it is going to hurt the game's overall reception. It just is what it is. This does make me wonder if this was the chosen style for when Dragon Age 4 was meant to be a live service multiplayer game, and then they didn't change it for whatever reason. I just wish, man, I wish they went with more of a mature look. Now, regarding the environments in this game, I'd say the art style works much better here, as there are definitely some beautiful areas. So I am going to give like kind of a thumbs up in this category, but I feel like I have to say, I feel like the game's lighting and glow effects are being overused, and it makes me wonder if this is done to try to give like more so the illusion of things looking better than they actually are. But I guess, I mean, if it looks good, it looks good, right? But whatever. Anyways, that probably won't make sense to everybody, but I think some of you will get what I'm trying to say here. I would have personally preferred a more muted, darker look rather than this flashy, glowy, highly saturated look, but this is what it is. You can either accept it or you can't. I'm going to move on from this, and there's no sense in really complaining anymore. On to
Hopefully we can mess around with these settings a bit more too, because you'll notice like I'll see certain games that will have like bloom amped up way too much, and it just kind of almost like it puts this glow on everything or over fogging here. Hopefully we can go in there and actually like tweak the settings. And I did see something about the UI settings where you could take off certain waypoints and stuff and have that more immersive experience.
Accept it or you can't. I'm going to move on from this, and there's no sense in really complaining anymore. On to a much more positive note for myself. The cinematics in this game, setting the art direction aside for the 3D cinematic scenes, I thought they were pretty great. Animations could definitely use some work at times in the cinematics, especially facial animations or in the dialogue scenes, etc. But I don't really care that much about that. What I really appreciated here were the camera angles, how the scenes are set up to tell a story. The voice acting, from what I remember, was good. And something that really stood out to me here was the sound design of this game and the music behind many of these cinematic scenes.
You have no idea what you have done. Soulless. I know what I did.
I was getting like huge movie theater vibes at times, and especially when you sit down to play the game for the first time, it can be quite exciting just hearing everything and immersing yourself in the storytelling through the cinematics. Interestingly enough, BioWare also uses several 2D cinematic scenes for not only parts of the intro, but also I think some of the transitional scenes between chapters or scenes representing some memories and things like that. And I personally think that these 2D scenes actually work really great for the game, and I love the art style here. You feel like you're being told a story out of a book in a way, and I think that this fits great. This type of vibe and feeling fits really good.
Wukong did a lot of different cinematic styles. Y'all know, like Wukong, it did like, there's like one, there was like 2D between the chapters that set things up, the oil painting, the mural. It was just a lot of different approaches here, but yeah, that looks good.
With the Dragon Age franchise, with all the storytelling that goes on, especially from characters like Varric. Moving on to the game's UI and visual elements. While the basic gameplay UI, like the skills, the minimap, and the health bar, and even the menu screens, they're functional and not overly bothersome, the constant pop-up on-screen elements, such as the quest markers, which look very, I have to say, very cheap and like highly computerized here. The button prompts that are always popping up, glowing items in the world, which chests or loot or anything that can be picked up is seemingly constantly either pulsing in a gold light or just glowing bright gold. Enemy targeting UI alerts, such as lines that go right across your screen when ranged opponents are aiming at you. Incoming AoE damage alerts with shapes all over the ground. Defense and parry hues, like in the symbols for those and the colors, and the list goes on here. Much of this, I feel like, disrupts immersion, especially when several of these visual elements are on your screen at the same time, which does happen a lot. Many of these features often felt intrusive to me, I guess, not immersive and rather cheap looking. And as much as I hate to be saying this, I mean, all I can do is just give you guys my honest opinions when I play games. Unfortunately, I have to say that it kind of gives off a bit of a mobile game-like appearance in this particular category. I'll just pull up a mobile game right now.
Dude,
you could just see like there's a little bit of resemblance going on here. While some settings do exist to reduce a few of these elements, this still doesn't fully address the problem. I even turned everything I could off at one point, but there was still just a ton that was on.
Dude, we got roasted in the comments on that video, by the way. Everybody's like, dude, you're such a hater. You're just hating on Dragon Age for whatever reason. We said it looked like a mobile game. And coming from the man himself right here, he too is saying it kind of has some mobile game with the AoE tags being projected and everything just really crowding the UI. Yeah.
Maybe something was bugged, I'm not sure. But regardless, I shouldn't have to turn off all the UI in a game for it to look and feel good. I guess things are functional. Things are very functional. It just doesn't really look great, especially in a game that's really heavy on trying to immerse you into the world. Take a look at this chest that's just glowing insanely bright right here. And then right after that, I'm solving a little puzzle, but everything just glows in bright gold. There's really nothing to figure out or find here. Like, let me use my brain. Let me try to find things. Let me engage with the environment. But it just kind of feels like follow the yellow brick road everywhere. With at least in this regards, I don't really like that. Flipping the switch here once again, since some of you have subscribed, unsubscribed, resubscribed. Let me see if I can get your subscription back or cause you to unsubscribe. We're going to talk about the game's story, and then we're going to get into combat. Now, story, world building, and also companions at large have been one of BioWare's strengths over the course of their history. And initial impressions wise, from what we know and what I played, I gotta say, I'm into it in this game from an initial impressions perspective. I think the story is set up pretty cool. You have some ancient blighted elven gods that now have escaped their long time imprisonment, and this offers a new story for new and returning players alike to get excited for. And then of course we have Solus's mission to tear down the Veil, which is basically a direct continuation from Dragon Age Inquisition's Trespasser DLC. So we have something that's more friendly to new players and also a plot that returning players are very interested in. I'm also currently reading Tevinter Nights, written by some of the Veilguard writers, and from what I've read so far, I still see potential in BioWare's writing, so as of now, I'm remaining optimistic in this category.
I think we've seen enough. Here's the thing, guys. I'm playing this game. I'm playing this game. You know, you told me, Cross, you need to experience BioWare's best. So what did I do? I went out and I played Anthem. Then you say, no, Cross, you shouldn't do that. So what did I do next? I downloaded and played Mass Effect Andromeda. And then you say, no, Cross, you still haven't experienced the best of BioWare. So you know what? This will be our first Dragon Age game. Okay?
The story in the world building is one of the main reasons why I'm definitely going to be playing the game. Companion dialogue wise, I didn't really experience it enough and I ran out of time, so I don't want to comment too much on this, even though I know it's important to Dragon Age and BioWare games, but it did feel pretty standard.
Take, guys, you can't have it. You can't have it both ways. You tell me you want me to go experience what BioWare has to offer. I'm doing it. I'm literally doing it right here.
BioWare from what I did experience. I will say though, very early on in the game, in the Lighthouse area, which is like the central hub, I spoke to two companions, and after my conversations were over, like you can see here with Nev, there was no way to interact with them again. I really hope that's not how the game works, and it very well may not, but I am just sharing what I was able to experience. Maybe it's because I don't really have an official party at this time. It's very early on in the game. I did of course appreciate a reputation system being present with the companions, and this at least initially feeling like it will actually affect your interactions as the game goes on. And BioWare also revealed to us how if we give companions gifts, they will display those gifts in their rooms in the Lighthouse, and I thought that was pretty neat. On a side note, let me show you something that I thought was pretty cool, and I'm going to black out the words here because the description is a bit of a spoiler. But basically, something happened to Nev in the game due to a choice that is made by the player, and this caused her to have, I don't know if this is permanent, but this particular status effect, I'm not even gonna show you what it's called, but
relationship progress is slower. Okay, and this is a status effect. Abilities are more effective though, but she will no longer use supportive abilities. Interesting. I'm wondering how she gets that status effect. I'm also curious, like what is the depth here of RPG? You remember like whenever you would make a move on a character in Baldur's Gate 3, but they weren't ready, you know, and they were like, Shadow be like, whoa, no. We're not skipping first base here. So, you know, I don't know if there's going to be anything like that.
But it has some effects on Nev's gameplay and her skills and stuff like that, and your relationship with her as well. And it's always cool to see stuff like this in RPGs. Something major happened, and she's been
okay, lots of skill trees. Yeah, multiple skill trees here for Nev. Okay.
Gameplay wise and character wise. Since I just mentioned the Lighthouse, let me touch on it quickly as it is pretty important to this game. And I'm also going to show some very early on footage. So maybe a spoiler for some of you, chapter markers below. The Lighthouse is basically your central meeting hub in this game between missions, etc. Similar in many ways to Skyhold and Inquisition. I'm very happy that the Lighthouse exists in this game. I feel like the Dragon Age games need this gather your party type place, especially for
Chad. If you can't go flawless in Destiny, don't worry. You can still make it to the Lighthouse for $79.
Dialogue reasons and, you know, companion relationship building. And the Lighthouse also adds a bit of a feeling of freedom for what has now become a mission-based game. The cool thing about the Lighthouse is that it will change over time. What you're looking at right now is the earliest version of the Lighthouse. There's not too much going on. I don't even have all the companions here. Everything's very basic, but there will be opportunities for this to grow according to decisions that you make in this game. It will automatically...
Dude, I am so down for this. It's definitely a rundown version of this place, right? But if there's like a way to like, maybe if you platinum the game and you make this place super sexy, you build everything up, and I don't know, you get some better lighting here because this place is looking a little depressing. But yeah, I'm completely down with building up a base.
Change as it does exist within the Fade, so that is kind of lore accurate as the Fade changes things depending on how your character's experiencing life. And there will be some opportunities to also customize the Lighthouse. You know, I actually like the Lighthouse as of right now, initial impressions wise, and I'm excited to see it develop and grow alongside my character and companions. That should be pretty neat. And that's about all I can really say about it right now. So, yeah. World building is also another positive from what I've seen here, working off of previous lore, you know, little lore tidbits and things of that nature. And there's some cool connections back to the previous games and dialogue, you know, a few returning characters, and BioWare has already said this publicly, so I mean, and maybe it's a spoiler. Let me, I'll when the screen turns red, you can come back if you want to go away, but you will end up, here it comes, you know, meeting and seeing the Inquisitor. I don't really have anything else to say on that, but the Inquisitor was the main character in Dragon Age Inquisition. And I think you can even customize that character to look like your previous Inquisitor. Super cool. And this does bring us into choice consequence, something that is important to many RPG lovers out there. I did see some world reactivity while I was playing, some things much more minor in nature, such as, you know, choosing to take a certain companion with you over another, and that choice, you know, showing some reactivity in terms of dialogue and the way that companions act after a mission is over. BioWare also presented us with a very impactful decision.
Your player character from the last game. Dude, the more we may have to play Dragon Age Inquisition, but we can go, if we play Dragon Age Inquisition a few weeks before the launch of this game, and then we've got this direct comparison that's very fresh on the mind, no rose tinted glasses. It's like, no, this is what we literally just experienced just last week.
Choice that a player has to make, and the consequences are pretty serious. Like I don't want to spoil anything, but very different results. Your world will be different from someone who chose differently. At least in this one area, which is pretty significant. And BioWare also said that there are more impactful decisions to be made. And while I can't verify that, that could be PR talk, and maybe there's only one big really decision that you make. All I'll say here is initial impression wise, and from what I've heard, I'll give this category a thumbs up. And to wrap up this all things writing category, of course, there's no way I can know how things are going to turn out, and I don't know about a lot of the companions either. But overall, as a whole, I'm feeling optimistic about the game's writing. All right, it's combat time. I'm going to start off by saying this is not the direction that I wanted the Dragon Age franchise to go in. I would much prefer a combat system that favors more tactical elements over crazy, fast-paced action elements for this particular franchise. But I will say, overall, looking back, I did have fun with it on this initial session, but I also feel like it could get old pretty fast. That's kind of how I'm feeling. I also don't think that CRPG lovers are going to like it much, meaning if all you really play are CRPGs, or perhaps if like all you play are really hardcore ARPGs like Souls games. But if you like more casual action RPG games, I'd say there's probably some fun to be had here for many of you. And to my surprise, there's actually a lot more to the combat than I thought there was going to be. You would think that action combat like this is all button mashing, and it certainly can be, especially if you play on easier difficulties. There's actually a decent amount of systems and mechanics going on here that you can engage with that you may not have been able to catch just by watching someone play. I did up the difficulty to hard mode at a few sections, and this was kind of the slap in my face that I've been ignoring many of the systems and mechanics up to that point. Although your character only has 3 active abilities, which can kind of sound like a downgrade from previous games, there's also an ultimate ability. You can equip runes, some of which can be activated, kind of like abilities are, and you can cycle between 3 equipped runes at a time. The base kit for each class also offers a good amount of agency over controlling what your character can do.
That's a cool ability right there.
The warrior, for example, has a light attack, heavy attack. You can charge these attacks up, both the light and heavy. You have a dodge. You can hold your shield up to block damage, or you can perform a perfect defense by pressing the block defense button right when an enemy attacks, which does like its own special parry animation. You can sprint attack, jump attack. There's a base kit shield throw, and depending on how you build your character, there's also combos that you can perform with certain button combinations, and some of which are unlocked through traits in the skill tree.
This may not look that appealing to you, but can I just say this looks, just literally listening to this and watching this, like no outside of gameplay, this looks better than what we saw the other day on the other video we watched. What I'm getting from this though is that if you really want to be challenged and if you really want to take advantage, like if you want to be in a position where you're going to be forced to use everything mechanically here and be strategic, you're going to have to play on the harder difficulties.
You know, stuff like light, heavy attack, or you might be able to do a particular button combo right after a successful defense, for example. On top of that, the warrior can seamlessly switch to a two-handed weapon at any time, and the two-handed weapon has its own set of base actions and animations. The rogue can switch to the bow, of course, and the mage can switch to an orb and dagger. Each class also has its own fairly unique resource generation bar. Rogues use momentum, warriors use rage, and mages use mana, and these all have like their own somewhat unique ways of building up. For example, when rogues take damage and deal damage, their momentum goes down, but like when a warrior takes damage, their rage bar will actually go up. And this resource bar is used for the activation of many of the abilities in the game. So with all that at your disposal, you actually don't really feel like you're limited with what you can do. And also note that it's very easy to switch out active abilities in between combat encounters to change it up and make things feel a bit more fresh. And you can also respec very easily for no cost. So I was actually impressed with the amount of agency you have over your character in combat, even though this is not the direction that I want the combat to go in, I guess I could say. I certainly wasn't too happy hearing the news that you can no longer take control of your companions anymore, like direct control, which was kind of a staple feature of all the Dragon Age games up to this point. Even though some people weren't into using that feature, a lot of people were. But the tactical pause menu in combat does give you some control here. You can choose what targets you want your companions to attack. You can have them attack the same target, and you can have them use their own abilities. Now the tactical pause is also
so in previous Dragon Age games, what you could literally swap over to your companions and play as them, but in this game you just kind of set your companion up to do certain things, whether it's to tank a group of enemies, to heal, to do DPS.
Also where you queue up combos. Now I didn't do a ton of combos. I was trying to learn other aspects of the game, but I do plan on engaging much more with this mechanic on full release. It's pretty cool to queue a combo and then watch it play out. If you feel like you have some control, like I said, if you're playing on an easier difficulty, it probably doesn't really matter for a lot of things. But on the harder difficulties, it does feel like you got to engage with some of this stuff and it becomes meaningful. And while on the combo topic, there's a system of primers and detonators behind combinations that make many of these combos pretty deadly. For example, some abilities in this game cause particular status effects on.
That's literally, I don't know, maybe primer and detonators exist in other bioware games, but that's literally Anthem system. Anthem systems was primer and detonators.
Opponents such as overwhelmed, weakened, and sundered. And these status effects can act as primers and or detonators. For example, a mage might use a spell that causes an opponent or opponents to become overwhelmed, and the rogue class then may have an ability that can actually detonate overwhelmed opponents. This basically causes an AoE explosion, so you have some synergy here between different classes and also abilities. On top of that, you may also have gear that specifies that something such as detonating an overwhelmed enemy will then apply bleeding. So there's a lot of different systems that are at work here. All of them are pretty simple, but there's like enough of them, and a lot of them actually.
The combat, I'm actually okay with the combat. Just the enemies you're fighting look so damn goofy, man. Just like that enemy he just finished right here. This one right here.
Overwhelmed opponents. This basically causes an AoE explosion, so you have some synergy here between different classes.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Again, I don't want to come off too nitpicky here.
And also abilities. On top of that, you may also have gear that specifies that something such as detonating an overwhelmed enemy will then apply bleeding. So there's a lot of different systems that are at work here. All of them are pretty simple, but there's like enough of them, and a lot of them actually, to where it doesn't feel like, it feels like there's a lot to dive into, at least on your initial session. Now, negatives of
that's pretty cool. He dropped a crossbow turret.
Combat include touching back on the UI, of course, and the visual section. Some people aren't going to be able to get over this look. And that, I mean, I understand. Many times it does feel like there's just way too much going on, to the point of where it can get pretty like annoyingly frustrating. With that said, if and when you start to feel this way, this is probably a good time to consider using the tactical pause a bit more, and I like to feel incentivized to use that. But even with that, it's just not a great feeling having 10 different colors on your screen with lines going across as enemies are constantly shooting and staggering your character from a distance. It's almost too hectic at times. When there's too much going on, it stops being as much of a skill issue and it becomes more of a combat design issue. Animations are also not really the best here. You get caught on things in the environment. You end up in like these weird positions when you jump at odd times or slide, and you feel a little floaty at times. Could use some more work in my opinion. Overall though, like I said, not the combat style that I was personally hoping for, nor do I think it's great or anything like that, but I should say I did have fun on that initial session. Like, I'm not telling everybody about it now. I'm like, oh my God, you got to try this out. But it was pretty fun, and I do want to jump back into it and mess with some different builds and abilities and kill some shit. Speaking of builds, this brings us into character progression systems. This game does not involve controlling attributes or anything like that, but that's not the end of the world to me, even though I would prefer that. But I gotta say, the skill trees are surprisingly robust here, with many nodes and pathways to explore for each class, although I do wish there were more abilities to choose from. You'll basically earn a point with each level up to progress through the skill tree. You can go in any direction that you want, investing into abilities, traits, passives, greater passives, and of course,
let me ask you something, Chad. Is Dragon Age the kind of game, which I know this is like a different take on combat for this type of game, is this a better game for controller or mouse and keyboard? Looks like controller would be better.
you have the specializations, which offer some exclusive nodes, including a special ultimate. Companions also have skill trees, though they are much simpler, but I actually think that kind of works for this game, considering that we can no longer take direct control of our companions. We can't play as them anymore. I wasn't able to get into reputation systems much, nor gear progression, nor faction progression. I'm going to refrain from commenting on those aspects here. But progression via leveling up through skill trees, I'm going to give a thumbs up. I appreciate the size of the trees and the player.
Skill tree looks good, man. Skill tree looks good. We need to be in a position where every aspect of our skill tree, you know, for me, I just want to be in a position where it's like, yes, unlocking that portion of my skill tree makes a tremendous difference and allows me to conquer, you know, those tougher areas without it, you know, without being in a situation where it's like, no, you know, honestly, the game's so easy, you don't have to worry about any of this. This is just added flair.
To navigate them in a way of your choosing. Before we wrap things up and get to my final thoughts, I want to quickly touch on exploration. But I didn't really play enough to have a truly informed opinion here. From my limited time, though, I will say exploration didn't feel that great. But this could also be because I was in the earlier parts of the game. According to BioWare and also IGN, who played a lot more than me, some areas do apparently open up a bit more and may have a much less linear feeling, but I don't know. My limited experience with exploration was not very exciting, though. Just a few rather boring side pathways with not much to see or really do. I didn't get a sense of environmental freedom of traversal really at all. Really hoping this improves once I'm able to get a bit further into the game, but as of now, the map designs feel, I mean, linearity is a word that comes to mind, and restrictive in terms of the environment and what you can do with it.
Let me ask you something on this, guys. Is previous Dragon Age games, was exploration a big part of that in terms of like having a big world to explore? Yeah, Inquisition, yes. Inquisition is huge. That's crazy, dude. I get so many different answers on Inquisition. I feel like most people say Origins is pretty good in here, or at least from what I've seen. I get very different opinions on Inquisition.
A word that comes to mind, and restrictive in terms of the environment and what you can do with it. Overall, initial impressions wise, this game is pulling me in so many different directions, and it leaves me very conflicted. But as a fan of the franchise as a whole, and as someone who has already gone through the mourning period for wishing that the DA franchise would head more towards the CRPG direction, or more towards the deep, complex RPG direction, I guess I could say, I do find myself still excited to jump back into it on official release. With that said, I just can't confidently say to you all, though, as my audience, that yeah, this is a definite buy. My guess is that this game will unfortunately continue to be quite divisive, but I could be wrong. For myself, the potential story and the world building is a powerful enough force to the DA franchise that I'll be playing it no matter what. And there are certainly some cool things that I talked about in the video, but I don't really see any world where this could be like my game of the year or anything like that, as a few of the negatives that I mentioned in the video, they just feel a little too impactful for what I personally value in games, specifically RPGs. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I hope this video was helpful. More Dragon Age content to come, including some exclusive class overviews here over the next couple days.
Dude, fantastic stuff. Thank you for the candor. When you go to a studio, and I've seen in the past, you know, you kind of have like a, I wouldn't say wine and dine, but you get a very positive experience, right? And you walk away, and a lot of people will give like an overglow to their review. So I appreciate Wolfbeard, man, just offering his candor and just telling us how his experience went. Yeah, I think he saw the positives, saw the negatives. I'm personally going to play it just because I want to see how it shakes out. And just like my previous experience with BioWare games, I mean, they definitely weren't the best experiences, but I'm going to continue trying. I think this one's going to be it. From my experience with Anthem as my first BioWare experience, to Mass Effect Andromeda, to now my first Dragon Age game, I think this may be the one. This could potentially be the one that's like, now you're hitting it. This is the BioWare magic that everyone was talking about for so long.
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.